your identity should be based not on the subjective experience, which is very dynamic and very complex, but it should be based on the body. Why? Because the body is your anchor to objective reality. It anchors you. If you untie your boat you unanchor your boat and from the shore of reality, then you start drifting into the ocean of subjective feelings. And that's dangerous. It's not a good thing to do. So you have the ocean. It's an ocean. Your mind is an ocean. The spiritual world is an ocean, including every form of combination of male-female attributes. But it needs to be anchored to a wharf, to the shore, to objective facts, and that's your body. And so when that Kabbalistic book talked that Tamar had a male soul, it didn't say she was a man trapped in a woman's body. It would say that she was a woman with a male soul. Different description of the same thing, but a much better description, because this description doesn't lead into changing your body with the hormones and the surgery. It leads into accepting your body, embracing your body, but also embracing your soul, which may be different. And you go by your biological sex. Why? Because this is steady and objective, and basically it's a reflection of God's will as to who you're supposed to be, at least in this incarnation, in this life. Maybe next life you'll be, if I'm a man now, maybe in my next life I'll be a woman. Maybe in my previous life I was a woman. I don't know. But in this life, it is God's will, and in fact, it's my own inner, super conscious soul will, because God asks each creature to agree to how it's created, a major principle in Talmudic thinking. In the Talmud, it says that every being in the world accepted its the form in which it was born. Every fish, every animal, every bird, every human being, we accepted, we signed on the contract, on the dotted line, that we're willing to go into this body with this particular set of traits and this particular time in history, and to this pair of parents and everything that goes along with this. We agreed. So it's both God's will and it's our own will, but it's a super conscious will. Our body reflects what we agreed to have in this life, in this world. So we have both the level of the non-binary soul and the level of the binary body. And in an interesting way, we can say that this is the most non-binary thing to have. Why? Because in an ironic way, all these people that are shouting that they want to be non-binary and they don't want to conform to the binary norms, all these people are making another binary, which is their binary is binary thinking versus non-binary thinking. And they're saying binary thinking is old-fashioned, it's passé, it's previous generations, it's stereotypical, we need to get rid of it, and now we need to celebrate non-binary. And this is a new kind of binary. If you really want to be non-binary, you would say, let's accept both elements. There is a binary. There is a sex biological binary. It's there. You can't ignore it. You're embodied within it. It's in every fiber, in every cell of your body. You have that binary. But you also have, you're right, you also have the non-binary subjective world. But be careful not to untie your boat from the shore and let it drift, because there's no knowing where you'll get. Okay, so what is going on today? So my theory is as follows. The world is now tired of purely binary thinking, of thinking only in binary terms. Why? Because it's overly stereotypical. It focuses too much on the biological body and not enough on our psyches and our inner world. It doesn't address the mosaic, the individual nature, the individual difference between each and every person. And it also goes with a lot of baggage on what femininity and masculinity are supposed to be. Much of that baggage is indeed in need of revision and updating. It's very, very stereotypical and old-fashioned. And we've advanced. We've advanced meaning we are more sensitive to each individual being very, very unique and also not necessarily conforming to the stereotypical picture of the man and the woman, and we don't want to go back to the age in which men were men, or men were real men and women were real women. People, the world as a whole, culture as a whole, is sort of fed up with this, and rightly so, because the previous generations were not sensitive enough and didn't give enough room to the individual. And if you were a little bit of, what they call the sissy boy, then you would suffer. And the macho boys would make fun of you. And if you were a tomboy, you would be made fun of. And that's unfair, because we are very, very different. And a stereotypical society is a suffocating society. So the general feeling, an unconscious zeitgeist, like the spirit of the times, is that we don't want to go back. It was suffocating, only thinking in binary terms. But the problem is that on the way to creating a world that has more complex and nuanced thinking about gender and masculinity and femininity, and giving room to the psyche, to the soul with all its complexity, on the way to this thing, they started ignoring or sort of jumping over or dismissing the biological binary level. And they started seeing this as a kind of something that's unimportant. It's merely the body. It's merely the biology. It's only the anatomy. It doesn't really mean anything. And when you start ignoring that, and you start only talking about the non-binary spectrum element of each one being very different and having both masculine and feminine attributes, and you do that while ignoring the level of the body, or dismissing it or disregarding it, then this is something unbalanced, and it's not true. So the idea is that the LGBT movement, as crazy, as very secular, as very unrespectful of tradition as it may be, and as going against explicit Torah biblical prohibitions, all this doesn't take away from the fact that every phenomenon, every new movement in the world, according to Kabbalah, has a holy root. It has a holy root. It descends from something that's good and holy, a kernel of an idea that wants to come into the world, but is coming into the world in a very simplistic or very coarse way that we need to peel away the way it appears and get to the divine, holy, sacred root of it. So the root of this whole gender bender movement, of the whole LGBT movement, the root is that it's trying to make us notice and appreciate the fullness of the individual psychological makeup that we all have. That's very, very varied and very wide and very different from person to person. And the gender thing is a mosaic there. It doesn't conform to the biological duality. But again, the problem is that you can't jump over the level of the body, of the embodiment. This is a culture that talks about disembodied gender. And it wants to just jump over, skip over the body, and then not only dismiss the body as mere vessel, mere garment, it also wants to then reshape the body. It sees the body as malleable. It wants to reshape relationships, reshape norms of behavior, and even reshape the body itself with new means that we've acquired that are basically hormones and surgery. So the result is that instead of having a more complex and nuanced worldview, you have a far more simplistic worldview, a very one-dimensional ideology, and also a very dangerous one, because then you can start saying every teenager, or even younger than teenager, if they say that maybe they belong to a different gender, we should fast track them into taking hormones and puberty blockers and all kinds of crazy things. And this, I'm happy to say, it's beginning to backpedal, because many of these teenagers that grew up realized that that much harm was done to them. That instead of the responsible adults being responsible adults and telling them, hang on, wait, you're a teenager, you're going through some phases, hang on, wait until you're older to decide, they out of wanting to sort of be compassionate and to be enlightened, to be progressive, they told them, okay, let's go with whatever you want, whatever you say, and put them on hormones, and they became the horrible things. They became castrated, and they became infertile. And so very dangerous ideology, very dangerous one-dimensional simplistic ideology, which you can also then forcefully advance and fight against the opponent. And that's what we're seeing in the world today. So all this is very wrong, but at its root, if you sort of boil it down to the main message it's trying to get across, there is something very real, very true about that message. But the problem is that it has to go along with a much more respect to the physical sex into which we are born. This isn't some random thing. This isn't some, our body is not just some vehicle into which we were randomly dropped. And possibly we were dropped into the wrong vehicle. And no vehicle will ever reflect my fluid and multifaceted gender identity. It doesn't contradict. You can be absolutely a man, absolutely a woman, and also be very, very, very much an individual with your own different character traits. And you can be a man with a lot of feminine properties, and that's a wonderful thing. You can be a woman with some very, very masculine properties. It's a wonderful thing. But you're a woman. You're not a man in a woman's body. You're not a woman in a man's body. You're a man and a woman, and because this is an objective fact, we can see it. And this is not something that we're not drifting in the ocean of subjective feelings.